I'm here with Siobhan Lee, an actor based in New York. Siobhan, how are you?
I'm great, Tunji. Thank you. How are you?
I'm not too bad. So before we get started properly, I just want the audience to know that this conversation is kind of going to be split in two parts. So the first part, we'll talk about your experience doing like the monologue slam with Ethereal Theatre. And the second part, we'll talk about your experience doing an all-female kind of like comedy of errors via Zoom. Just quickly, what are your overall thoughts about kind of like online theatre?
Quickly, I don't know, I'll try quickly. I have a lot of thoughts, actually.
However long you want. This is just like intro question.
I think it's something that is, it's, okay, I think it's something that's like kind of a great added ability to kind of share theatre with people who wouldn't normally go anyway. I mean, I certainly obviously love the theatre and tend to go, whenever I can, whether that's time or being able to afford to go. But, one of the things I loved doing is I would get all the RSC Globe Performance DVDs. I have them all and I watch them at home, and it's just like, it's a great way. It's like I've seen some stuff at the Globe, but not everything. So it's a great way to still get the next best experience. So I think making theatre more accessible and reaching people is great. You can have the opportunity to reach an audience who wouldn't necessarily go to the theatre or wouldn't think to go to the theatre for whatever reason. However, I think there's that one element of putting what the National Theatre have done and other theatres about putting shows that have been recorded online is one thing. And then I think then in terms of what we've been seeing since obviously the kind of self-isolating and the shutdown has been artists who have wanted to continue making live theatre. And I think it's great. And I think the initiative of doing it is great. And I think it's been definitely a learning curve for everyone involved. And I think at the moment we're still in that kind of spot where we're trying to see what works and how it translates. Yeah. Because I think, I've seen a real mix of things. I think it's tricky as well, because if I take something like what the National have done or the Globe or any of the other theatres have done, they've put stage productions with costume where the actors are together, a fully rounded performance online. However, doing a show on Zoom when you've got, where I've done the Shakespeare one in America, we had people in Florida, we had people all over different time zones doing it. And, you're talking about a different background, different technical capabilities and qualities of camera and sound, how the rehearsal process works with that. But ultimately, through training and stuff, it's about being connected to your partner in that scene. Yeah. And being able to look in their eyes and just let go in the moment and believe and be authentic in the moment. And that obviously is challenging when you're doing it over a Zoom screen where I do it. And, all actors, we have our little self-tape setups and, I think the challenge is for the actor to overcome the physical logistics of it. But I also think that it's navigating a way of how do we perform to the audience? How do we create a vibe? So I watched a show recently. It was not actually theatre so much as it was a comedy, improv. And it just got me thinking, they were doing an improv show over Zoom, which, with improv, you get the audience very involved in that. The issue that show had for me was they were still pretending like they were on stage with each other. And it was just distracting. And it just wasn't, they didn't need to do that. And I think, when you're on stage, the goal is not, the stage is a representation of the world the characters are in. And we invite the audience to use their imagination to not see the stage, but to see the characters in their world. And to build that world through little prompts through the stage. What I have found through watching some online theatre, through watching live shows, is that we seem to be now wanting to trick the audience into believing that we're on a stage and that stage is the world. We've added an extra level instead of just kind of owning the environment we're in, and finding a way to make that work. Now, whether that's at some point, you know, you have different backgrounds in green screen technology, whether that's everything's just minimalistic, and that's been one interesting area. But it's like, I mean, you and I trained together, Tunji, but you'll remember in the early stages of drama school, I broke my elbow.
Yeah.
And we were doing Chekhov, and I was Ranievskaya, and I was just trying to do the scene like my arm wasn't broken and pretending it wasn't there. And it sounds so obvious now, but it didn't really dawn on me till after, obviously, I was, you know, talking to our course leader and the director of that show, and it was like, why can't she have a broken arm? Why didn't you play her like she had a broken arm and use that at your disposal? And it's the kind of same thing. I think that's one element of, like, this is the situation we're in. We all know we're now watching a screen of people doing a show. Like, we're not going to believe you're on stage. We're not going to believe you're in the same room with each other. Like, we know that you're not.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the hard thing, is for the actor to find a way of being able to connect on that deep level with the other actor, and somehow owning the world around them and finding the way of convincing the viewer that they're in that world, and to let go of the fact that there isn't a stage anymore. Like, because, you know, like I said, it's just, the stage is never supposed to be visible anyway. It's supposed to be a visual cue to the world. So it's about finding that visual cue on screen into the world of the character. I also think on another level, the challenge is theatre acting is very different from screen acting.
Yeah.
And that has probably been another thing that I've noted. I moved to America in part because I wanted to pursue screen acting as opposed to theatre acting. I love the theatre though, but like for my own personal reasons. And for me, the States was the place to come for that. And since I've been here, I've done a lot of training with one of these legendary acting coaches. I mean, he's like the man that like Hollywood bring in. I mean, like, his name's Bob Krakauer. Incredible.
We've talked about him before as well. So
yeah.
So.
He's incredible. He's incredible in his simplicity, but like, I've trained with him to learn about screen. And like I said, he has been on every major film, TV show. He's worked with every major actor you could think of and then some, about how screen acting works. How do you convey something on screen? And it is very different from theatre. And a lot of times the opinion is slightly controversial that sometimes the techniques that you need for theatre are not helpful when you're on screen. And TV, film, screen, it's a behavioral medium. It picks up behavior. It's a visual, it's a picture. And it's tricky to not be demonstrative. Oh, I'm sad. But it's about finding in a script the moments of emotion that motivate behavior. So, you know, and he breaks it down like in terms of like, if you watch, there's a scene in The Irishman he uses an example where Harvey Keitel, Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci are sitting at a table having a conversation and seemingly nothing is going on. But if you watch the behavior, everything is going on. You can tell who's in alliance with who's in charge of the conversation. And you can tell when a big decision has just been made and they haven't even talked about it, all by their behavior, whether it's who they're looking at in their line of sight, if they're not looking, at which point they react to something, even just with the flicker of an eye. It's incredible. And I think that is something that theatre actors who are used to filling a big stage and a big audience and have to reach those back seats have to find a way, because in some ways screen and media is screen and film, and there's a subtlety to it. You know, if you and I are having a conversation and I'm lying to you, I can't do anything big to convince that I'm lying, because you'll spot it. If you spot I'm lying to you, if I'm telling the audience I'm lying here, you spot it. So it's about how do you behave? And I think that's the other thing is I think will be for, you know, theatre training is incredible. Theatre acting is incredible. Like the skills and the tools and the just technique you have to be a theatre performer is incredible, and it's a real skill set, but so is screen and film. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of a, shall we say, I don't want to say look down, because that's not necessarily true, but you know, people don't necessarily hold the techniques of screen acting as highly in regard as theatre.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And the reality is that yes, it's acting, but they're two very different disciplines of acting. And theatre is an incredible skill set, but so is screen and film. And they're very different in a lot of ways. Both can support each other massively, but they are their own things. And I think theatre actors, particularly in the UK, we're very trained in theatre. I think you and I went to a school that probably did a lot more screen than a lot of the schools did.
Yeah.
But even then, you know, we were predominantly weighted in theatre. And I think as is the tradition in England. So I definitely think as well, it's something for theatre actors to now start exploring their craft and how that translates and works within a sort of screen setting. So those are kind of my thoughts of what I've seen and how I feel and how I'm tackling it as an artist as well. It's about creating the environment and creating the character and finding ways to connect with somebody that isn't in the room with you and have that moment. So those, I guess, are my thoughts and feelings on it. It's a work in progress, I guess, like everything, but it's a great opportunity as well that actually can empower actors and artists to really start making their own.
To bring it back.
Told you I go off on tangents all the time.
No, but it was good. There were so many gems in there that I feel the audience will be able to take away and look at, and maybe, who knows, maybe in the comments there'll be like a debate about this. I don't know, or maybe if people are starting to have like a lot of arguments in the comments, maybe we might need to have like a follow-up video. So for the monologue slam that you did with Ethereal Theatre, so how did you hear about that?
So Mark Zayat, who is one of the founders of the theatre, and again, someone that you and I trained with, contacted me, wanted me to be involved in it. And I thought it was great because, you know, we went into quarantine, we went into lockdown, particularly in New York is where I live. And as you know from the news and reports, probably it was a real scary time. Like it hit New York bad. So it was pretty bleak. And I didn't know whether I was going to come home to England. I didn't know what was going on. Everything, like the whole life, like everybody's life was tipped upside down. And I just felt like, wow, you know, obviously all personal feelings aside, you know, in this time of kind of dark kind of undertones and everything going on in the world, like this was something really positive. And initially I was like, I would love to be involved because just something positive to focus on. But then also talking, you know, they're an accomplished theatre company. But also their tie-in with Age UK really touched my heart because I thought, yeah, you know what? And you know, I've been lucky that I haven't been alone this whole quarantine, but yeah, there's plenty of people who have been alone during this time. There's plenty of people who are frightened and scared and life doesn't feel like normal and that's scary. And I thought it was a really beautiful thing to do to tie it in with Age UK to kind of reach people who might be alone and frightened or, you know, just need some relief from it. So I thought, you know, great, a chance to do some art, a chance to entertain, and to also, like, you know, support the community. And so I thought it came at a brilliant time. So when Mark reached out to me, I was thrilled to do it. And
in fact, I'm going to talk to Mark soon, and so I'll be interested to hear how he got that collaboration with Age UK and the full like story.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to find out like that full story.
Yeah. He and Dana. I also mentioned Dana as well. She was great too. Sorry, Dana. You too.
It was actually kind of nice, like her kind of like hosting it, then doing like the Q&A kind of like afterwards as well.
Yeah, because you get to know people as well, and I think as well, like, it was nice. They were just figuring it out, you know, and they had lots of variety of things going on. And they ran that thing like a month straight, I think, and every day it was like, you know, they worked hard. So I mean, I think and as far as I'm aware, I mean, they hit it off the ground pretty soon after everything had happened in March. And as far as at least from my knowledge, they were one of the first theatre companies really doing that. So they were really very pioneering and very kind of entrepreneurial with bringing that to the market. And then they didn't just make it, which I have a big respect for. They didn't just make it about them, you know, and it wasn't just about, oh, we want to do something and us. It was like by reaching out to a charity, it was making it about everyone, which I think is kind of what, at the heart of what we do is why we do it, is to connect with people.
Agreed. Okay, so on the monologue slam that night, you did 2 different monologues. So why did you pick those 2 monologues? Did you want to explore a certain, I don't know, characteristic? What spoke to you about those monologues?
Okay, twofold. I did them for me, and I also did them for the audience. There was an element of, obviously, as an actor, like, you have stuff that people want to cast you in all the time, and what outsiders see you as, and then you have characters and material and work that you connect with and that you enjoy. I picked something that was, the first one was a speech from Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. I picked that because it surprisingly was a moment of vulnerability in that character, and an expression of that vulnerability of this character who never shows vulnerability, who is a tough warrior. And it was really personal, and it was really about her insecurities and her, you know, some of the struggles she had growing up in it, and in her own skin, and who she is as a woman. You know, can she be a strong woman and this warrior, but also be a woman and want the things that, you know, a woman wants, whatever that is. And I just related to that material as somebody who took a while to get comfortable in their own skin, who has certain insecurities, who has, you know, an exterior of strength and being strong and being a successful, accomplished woman in a world where that's tough sometimes. So I related it to it personally, and I enjoy doing it. I think, you know, I've had feedback. I've performed that in front of casting directors and various people who have given me very good feedback on it. So I know it's actually a strong suit. So I knew I was going to be good at it. And ultimately that was an important factor because I was aware we had viewers. And I think ultimately I want to entertain people. I want to reach people. I want to touch people. When I work, it's not just like about me getting gratification from being, you know, in the center of attention, which you might laugh at. I'm kind of uncomfortable with, generally speaking, being in the center. I'm allowed in like comedy girl, but that's defensive, but whatever. But what I like about it is I like being able, you know, I watched things growing up that made me feel less alone in the world. Oh, you think that too? Oh, that happened to you too? And suddenly you don't feel like an alien walking on the planet, and that like the human experience is a shared one. And you learn that through sharing stories, which I think is what's so beautiful about what we do. So that was kind of why I wanted to do it. And then the second one I picked was just the badass Daryl Hannah scene from Kill Bill. And I did that because it fits my kind of, you know, casting, and I have fun with it. You know, you get to be a complete badass, like, hello, you know, I let loose a snake on a guy, come on. And I knew with that one I could play with that, because the other one's much more stripped back and a lot more vulnerable, and the other one's a lot more like, I felt that one I could do something to be a little bit different, which is what we tried to do. So ultimately, like, and again, this is no shade on anybody, this is just my personal opinion. I was getting to the point where it's like, all power to you, do your art, do what you got to do. And this is not actually to do with anything, this is to do with across the board of what I was seeing in social media. But I was like, if I see one more actor's monologue where they're standing behind a blank wall and like acting, I'm gonna throw my phone out of the window. And I really didn't want to do that, because to me, this, like, the minute you agree to do something for an audience, it's not about you. These people are giving you their time, and in real life, their money, And sometimes online, you know, it costs money to see some of these shows. They're charging money. If someone is giving you their time and their money, you have to respect that. And it's not about me and me feeling good in that moment of just you know. So I wanted to do something that was entertaining.
Yeah.
And so I started with you know, the kind of subdued, stripped back Game of Thrones one. But I also decided to add a little pizzazz into the moment. And I was living with a very talented musical theatre actor, Margaret Rhodes, Maggie. And I wanted to get her involved and mix it up a bit. So between each monologue, we had her on the piano performing, and she picked songs from both, like she had 2 songs between pop culture and kind of musical theatre spectrum. And we used that to transition between each monologue. So I did my Brienne monologue. Maggie did a song that kind of then tied into kind of the mood of the piece. And then we played with the second monologue. And halfway through, we had the cameraman, Lamar McLean, kind of pretend like something had happened and he'd like gotten bitten by a snake, and he's like staggering, and suddenly the camera, i.e. the viewer, the idea was the viewer becomes the victim and it's shaking, and then we had him sort of lying on the floor, so it's off angle, and I'm just sort of sitting there with my like whiskey, just talking to the camera and the audience like they're the victim. And it was just a moment to play. And then how we closed it out is with Maggie singing a song, kind of almost like the end credits. And we just wanted to play with it and have fun and like do something for us that we would enjoy, but also like hopefully, you know, be a little bit outside the box for what I was seeing across the board, you know, and just remembering that we've got an audience to, you know, connect with.
Was it difficult to find songs that would transition to the next piece? Because I've often found myself, like, when I've wanted to do a show, sometimes it takes me like forever to find a song that like just fits the piece, fits the mood.
Yeah, I think it really does depend on what it is you're doing. I mean, Maggie is incredibly like knowledgeable, gifted musician. So, and she has a lot of songs in her book. So she kind of sung things that she enjoyed that were to her strength, but also like she was the one that really, you know, maybe I'll connect you guys together and you can have a chat with her actually from a musical theatre perspective. And she's done some online theatre as well. She did a Shakespeare piece as well while this was happening over Zoom. She can definitely tell you a story about that because they had some hackers. That's another issue that we need to learn to be careful about when we're advertising Zoom plays on the internet. Have a password because we get hacked by all kinds of crazies. But that'll be an interesting story. Actually, I'll put you in touch with her. She can tell that one. But I'll tell you when we're off air because it's not age appropriate. But anyway, so but she, you know, she knows what she's doing. So I think she was able to kind of, particularly someone who's in musical theatre, who's surrounded by music all the time, like she has that innate ability to connect emotionally with song and moments. But so I let her run with it. I just wanted to bring her in just to kind of, again, share the experience with her, but also like mix it up, have some music on the show and just try and enrich it. So I kind of was just, all I did in that part was just invite her on. So she took control of the song choices.
Okay. And just so the audience are aware, I'm going to link the monologue slam that Siobhan was in below in the description, so like you have no excuse. So you've got like all the behind the scenes gossip. Now you can watch it and you can understand it from an actor's standpoint and how she crafted her piece in order for you to get the best possible viewing. Be kind in your comment. The monologue slam, it was live. So before and also like we were following the stream, so there was someone on before you as well. Correct. So as each performance went by, did you find yourself getting nervous or getting butterflies, or were you just like calm, cool, and collected because you're in your own space? No, you know, I get nervous beforehand. I'm kind of like, you know, doing that thing where I'm like, I hope I remember the lines. I'm going over the lines. I'm going over the blocking of what I'm doing. I'm never too worried about nerves because one, nerves tell me that I care, quite frankly.
and that this is important to me. So anytime I have nerves, how I deal with them, maybe I'm kidding myself, is I'm kind of like, well, great, I guess this means this is important to me and I'm getting to do something that's important to me. Great. But I also know that the minute I start performing, the nerves disappear. So I kind of, I feel a bit nervous. I make sure I breathe and I try and drop the breath. And, I just try and just, whether it's short, whatever, just to relax and have a sense of calm. And then just before I go on, so that I'm not in Siobhan's head, I try and just be like, okay, who is my character? Who am I talking to? Where am I? What is my point of view on this person, this situation? What do I want? What do I want from this person that I'm talking to? And it just centers me a bit. So yeah, I mean, I think, nerves are inevitable. It's a scary thing, and it's like we choose to do it, of course, but it's like, putting yourself in front of people to be judged and, showing parts of yourself and your personality and who you are and taking that risk is nerve-wracking. So it's par for the course. But I think also, if you didn't care about it, if it wasn't important to you, then you wouldn't get nervous. But then at the same time, why are you doing it? Because no one would be an actor unless they loved it, because it's hard. Like, it's hard on every element of it. So you have to love it. And that's why I try and remember with the nerves, that the nerves are a good thing. And sometimes if I'm still nervous, I just try and channel that into whatever energy I'm going to play it.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about your experience of doing Comedy of Errors, Shakespeare over Zoom.
Yep.
So how did you hear
about... intended, huh?
how did you hear about this opportunity?
So I was in a show in New York in, when was it? February? February. And obviously, like, being in America with the English accent, you end up being like, people are drawn to you. But a girl that was in the show with me was hugely experienced in Shakespeare, very involved in Shakespeare, lives, breathes it, loves it. And she's part of this theatre company that is called Sister Shakes. And it's a female theatre company that, they actually do a lot of things, and but there's a focus on Shakespeare, of course. So she asked me to be involved in it. They were running a festival, obviously originally it was in June, they had to change the date because obviously everything going on in the world, didn't feel appropriate in America at the time to do something like that. But anyway, so they asked me to be involved in the Comedy of Errors. I didn't have to audition for it, which was great, because funnily enough, the show we did together was a comedy show, but involved me using a little bit of Shakespeare. So she saw me do some Lady Macbeth on stage. So I guess that was audition enough, but she just basically asked me to be the Duke. And again, like I said, I mean, I love Shakespeare, always have, always will, I'm sure. I love that challenge. So I was happy to do something again. I'd done a lot of classes over Zoom while this was happening, but to actually perform, to meet other people, and I just felt like, yeah, it sounds great. And I'm super glad I did it, because there were some incredible women who were in the show that I got to meet, and talent, and it was a positive experience. And again, obviously in light of what was going on in the world, they decided that they were going to raise money. They weren't charging people, they were doing donations that went towards Black Lives Matter charities, and it felt like, yeah, this feels right.
What were rehearsals like? Because I watched the show, and there were a lot of you in the show, and also you mentioned in your introduction that you're in different time zones all over the States. So how did that work? Rehearsal?
I mean, Natalia, who was our director, she was, she just had to use the implementation of organization, and there's lots of kind of online resources for scheduling apps and things like that So basically she sent out originally scheduling app, and everyone in the cast just put their availability down and the times. And then from that, she was able to work out kind of rehearsal schedule. Her approach, like every director, is a different approach. We effectively kind of did a 2-week rehearsal period where we blocked out about 3 hours, 5 days a week. It was, again, like there were times where there was like call times, so not everyone had to be there all the time. But yeah, we just kind of broke it down, and you know, it's tough because you can't do a lot of the physical stuff, and you know, you can't necessarily connect with your scene partner in the same way. But you know, at the same time, it's like we spent enough time like looking at each other over Zoom and like talking to each other and being used to each other's faces and voices, and just, you know, I think you have to be even clearer in your mind of who your character is, who you're talking to, that relationship dynamic, what you want, because you have to be crystal clear and focused on getting what you want, because there is a distance of, you know, if Tunji, you and I in a room together, and I want to wear your hat, or that's a bad example because you can't give me your hat, but I want you to take your hat off, like I'm going to probably be able to convince you easier in person than I could over the call right now. But you just have to find different tactics and different ways of communicating and reaching people. So, but yeah, the rehearsal was, again, we do the read throughs, we discuss the scenes, we get feedback, and you know, kind of, it was just like a rehearsal, just without the physicality. And you know, with theatre and Shakespeare, it's tough because the rehearsal processes are very physical. There's so many vocal exercises that go into it, and there's so much physicality and exploring of the text that you kind of have to do on your own a little bit, you know, in your own time. Which, you know, as opposed to, you know, kind of being in a room with your other actors looking foolish, you're on your own in your living room doing it, annoying your neighbors. So, yeah, it was different. But it, you know, I think the thing is, I think, again, part of this is that we have to kind of let go of what was and embrace what is. And this is the situation we're in, and we can kind of complain or be sad or feel grief for the loss of like how the process is or should be or what we believe it to be, or we can adapt. And I think, like all things, you know, change is always guaranteed. So yes, we've had this pandemic, but you know, theatre has to change eventually, like all industries, like all businesses. Everything goes through transformation periods and changes because the world changes, technology changes, people change. So I think it's a case of just trying to let go of what your expectation is out of a theatre rehearsal or even a theatre performance, and instead really focusing on like the situation that we're in and what we have at our means now.
I think one thing you said there about the actors once needing to be like even clearer than they would be otherwise. I felt that came across. I felt there was a lot of energy coming through the screen. I could feel that energy in certain scenes, and that was like really interesting. In fact, like it struck me. I was like, wow, okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah, it was. And I think I was, you know, my parts were the way that, again, you'd have to talk about edits and stuff. I mean, Comedy of Errors is like a 3-hour play, and we had to edit it down to about an hour and a half. Because that's the other thing you have to think about when you're doing kind of these things. It's like, can you really put a 3-hour show on Zoom and expect people to just be tuned in the whole time? So again, it's other things to think about. But you know, the edits where I was kind of in the very beginning and the very end, and generally speaking, my scenes with the same people, and the energy of the guys in my scene was great. Like, you know, the kind of energy that I was getting from my scene partner, particularly in the beginning, was great. And I think we really helped each other out because we were so like, you know, even though she couldn't tell, like how you right now, like I'm looking dead in your eyes as we're talking. It might not be apparent, I don't know, by the screen, but like eye contact is so important, which is why they have us in drama school walking around for an hour looking at each other in the eyes. And at the time it feels like the most exposing, terrifying thing ever, and you get the giggles and you feel awkward and you're like, oh my god, am I looking too long? Are they going to think I'm a psycho? But when you get more comfortable with that, you realize the power of eye contact, and that's the thing that can save you in a scene and keep you in a scene. And if you're on stage sometimes the thing that helps you drown out the fact that there's 400 people staring at you is it's just you and your partner, and you're making eye contact. And I think you can still do that. Like, I lock dead set on her eyes in the same way I am with you, and it's not the same as being together, but it's like, it's the connection.
Yeah, for sure. That's one thing.
It hypnotized you. Look into my eyes.
I've thought about this. This is going off a little bit, but I've thought about, like, how would you do like Meisner over Zoom like that?
Aren't they doing, like, I tell you, I miss Meisner so much. And I just realized, like, how I used to enjoy Meisner at drama school, because Kate Maravan is a legend. Shout out to Kate Maravan. I miss it so much, but I saw she was doing some online Zoom classes or online classes with Meisner. I guess it's just like, it'd be interesting to ask her how that works. But, you know, I guess it's the same sort of thing. It's like, I mean, the tricky thing sometimes, particularly we found, you know, again, is the technical issues. It's like sometimes the connection drops out or the sound drops out and there's a time delay. So those kind of, like, you know, acting is about reacting and it's responding and listening. If there's a time delay or something blocks out your words, that's an extra challenge that you don't necessarily have in a live performance that you also have to navigate. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to speak to anyone who's done an online Meisner class. I miss Meisner. It's great.
Likewise.
I'd love to do another one.
Did you face any challenges doing the show over Zoom?
What, you mean like technical?
Yeah, so on the night, did it go smoothly? Or
Yeah.
Because when I watched, like, you're on screen for a little bit, then you're like off screen. So was that just a case of you turning off your camera on and off? And following?
Yeah, it was basically, again, like, if your character's in the scene, they wanted you on the scene. If you weren't in scene in the same way, you'd go off stage, you're off stage, you're off Zoom. So, I mean, I was in the very beginning and the very end of that show. So there was about, 45-minute period where, like, I'm not there. Yeah, you just turn it off. I obviously had the sound on, so I could still, know what was going on. And, you can still see, just turn off your screen. So, but yeah, that was kind of deliberate. There was, Natalia wanted us all to wear black so that it was all just very simple. She wanted the background as clean as possible, which I think is also helpful. And then it was just decided, when we changed our names on Zoom so that it was our character name. But, when we were on, off. So that was just a case of, like, but that was like an added level of nerves that I was like, oh my gosh, what if it doesn't turn on? What if I press the wrong button? What if I didn't mute it and now they can hear everything I'm saying and I'm ruining the show? But they had a tech team that were also overseeing everything. So they have tech guys that, like, part of the theatre company for Sister Shakes, who were just monitoring because, obviously they had the waiting room for all the audience members, and obviously the audience were seeing a different version of the show to what the actors were seeing. So again, they had to learn all the technicalities of that, and they were just monitoring everything to make sure that, that didn't happen, because they could overwrite and turn us off if we needed to, but it was just better for us to turn ourselves off at the right opportune moment rather than relying on a tech team. So that was kind of how that worked. It was pretty smooth and seamless, just like kind of just another way of being on stage and off stage and knowing your cues.
For this show, did you find yourself warming up differently than you would for, like, a full stage show, or were you just like, let me just warm up how I would?
How did I do it? I mean, God, I gotta remember now. It really depends. What I've realized is, like, it was the same in the sense of, like, we were trained to have lots of tools at our disposal. Doesn't mean we have to use them all. So I've kind of found that since leaving training, like, my warm up, my preparation, really depends on what I feel I need, that character needs, that scene needs. So, like, if I'm on stage, like doing something on stage and filling a theatre, the old woohoo, yeah, and those kind of exercises that we do to kind of one, physically fill the space, but also vocally be able to open up the sound and fill the space. You know, you don't want me speaking on theatre voice on screen, you know, and it's like, because there's no one down there that needs to hear me. So like, obviously you have to tweak to that, but like, some of them are the same, you know, it's, you still do the same character work and still the same, like, you know, warm-ups, and, you know, you need to warm up your instruments, obviously. And then just for me, like, I'm one for tension. So I always try and like do yoga, a bit of meditation, breathing, and then, you know, focus back in on the character work, particularly with Shakespeare. I mean, there's so much work you have to do on the text to understand the piece, the emotion that was happening in the scene. So yeah, I guess some of it, I'm really going a roundabout way to say, yeah, some of it's the same, some of it's not. Like, obviously, like, some of the stuff, like, I'm not going to do big theatre warm-ups for, like, when the screen is, like, this close to me. Like, because otherwise, but, yeah, so, yeah, I think it's just, like, you know, that's the thing I kind of realized, like, after drama school. It's, like, whatever works for me that helps me get to where I need to be is what I will do. And that can vary depending upon the scene, the character, my state of mind, my mood, my physical feeling at the time, or like the medium for which we're communicating. Sorry, New York is so noisy. I'm really sorry for the background noise. People are so loud here.
Oh.
Sorry, it's outdoors. Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. So Siobhan, thank you so much. Just before we go, where can the people find you on social media?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is @it's pronounced Siobhan, Siobhan. And yeah, that's kind of like, obviously, I'm actually working on some comedy sketches that we've been filming and editing, and with some incredible acting talent in New York, some really like pretty well-known comedians and things like that. So those are going to be released imminently. I hope in the next week, 10 days. I'm just praying as long as everything goes well. But so yeah, so I've tried to put as much content on there. I also have a YouTube channel, which is Siobhan Lee. That's very new, but there will be new content coming on.
I'll get your YouTube details, and I'll put that at the in the description of this video as well.
And thank you for doing your work and your content, Tunji. It's been really amazing to see everything that you're putting together. Your hustle, your drive, your passion for what you do is super inspiring, and you're a rock star. So thank you, and I appreciate you kind of talking to me.
No, thank you, Siobhan. And yeah, so thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.